Well, my sermon title is, What's Your Story? You know, I love the comic page. I mean, that's the first thing I turn to in the newspaper every time I pick it up. And one of my favorite cartoons, or rather comics, is Pickles. I don't know if you read it, but I just almost always get a chuckle from it. And one day, a few weeks ago, there was a strip that, set me thinking. And in the first picture, Earl, who's the man in Pickles, was saying to Opal, his wife, "How can you throw this tray away? I remember the day I bought it." And then in the second frame he says, "It was a present for you on our wedding day. You said you loved it." And in the third frame, Opal says, "You gave me a used waffle iron on our wedding day, and we got that tray at a garage sale about 10 years ago." And Earl says in the last frame, "I like my story better." Earl had a convenient memory. But the Pickles cartoon that day really reminded me so forcefully that we all live in our stories, the stories we tell ourselves, about things and people and events that have taken place in our lives. But our stories really stem from memories. And sometimes those memories can really morph, be changed over time and as we revisit them again. And sometimes we are misled badly by our memories. I'm sure you've heard that the testimony of eyewitnesses can be so undependable. As a matter of fact, people have been convicted and served long prison sentences based on the sworn testimony of eyewitnesses. And many times they have been exonerated of these crimes because of the evidence of DNA. They couldn't have done the crime. Well, eyewitnesses were at the time absolutely certain that they saw, or at least what they thought they saw, was that person. But they were wrong. Our senses, our memories can may leave us heir to all sorts of mistakes, because what are we influenced by? So many things. Our state of mind, how we feel, our society, where we grew up. Our childhoods can influence what we see and how we interpret it. Our experiences, our expectations, our opinions, our fears, our religion sometimes can influence what we see and what we feel. And it goes on and on. All sorts of things influence us. I remember hearing the story of a middle-aged man by the name of Kent. He was the second of 3 sons. Their father had died some 10 years before, and this event took place right after their mother's funeral. And Kent said, "Well," he said to his other brothers, "now maybe I can stop feeling like the throwaway child." And they said, "Huh? What are you talking about?" "Well, you were the oldest son," he said to his oldest brother, "and Joe over here was the baby, and I was the one in the middle, and they didn't have much use for me." And his brothers were taken aback. They were astounded by what he was saying. "What?" he said. What they said, rather, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?" And Joe said, "I remember our mom kissing us and telling us that she loved us every night when she tucked us in when we were kids. That was for all of us. And we all got the same number of presents at Christmas. I remember, though, when you were like 13 or 14, and you kicked up a big fuss because you wanted a special fishing rod. And you got it. Nobody else got it, but you got it." Our folks were really even-handed, And even our estate, their estate, was divided equally between us. What are you talking about? Where did you get this weird idea? Well, Kent might have heard something somewhere about the neglected middle child, but somehow his memories and his childhood became selective. His memories about what happened were honed in on this idea. He interpreted neutral events as comments that were dismissive or perhaps demeaning. Now, all children are corrected. They are scolded, fussed at sometime or another. But in his memory, this proved to him that he was unwanted, he was unimportant in the family. That was the story of his youth. And he had secretly lived with this bunch of memories for a long time. And his brother's memories, their experiences really didn't change his mind. His life was not a very happy one because he continued to see himself and feel like the unimportant one, the throwaway one. And he was totally wrong, of course. Every one of us is indispensable right where we are. You know, I know of a very, very bright woman who has a business that employs something like 35 employees. It's a complex business, and it includes transactions of very large sums of money. But she vows and declares that she cannot do math. She has a terrible time figuring out what the 15 or 20% tip that she wants to give to the waitress when she sees the bill. She somehow cannot move the decimal point and add 2, or multiply by 2. Now, you know, this doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. Anybody who can run as complex a business as she has, she ought to be able to move a decimal point, my gosh, and multiply by 2. But that is her inner story. That's something that plays inside her head. Now, maybe it was born a long time ago through the experience or experiences of an impatient teacher or perhaps a critical parent. We don't know. But she is limited. She is limited by that word, can't. I can't do it. Now, I know you have seen examples of this. I know you have. You can think back, and people who were affected by something that happened in their lifetime, childhood, something that changed them because it became an inner rule, something that they had to struggle with time and time and time again. That is the point that I'm trying to make this morning, that we all live with stories that define us. They come from our experiences in life, and very often they tell us what we can expect from the future. These ideas, these old stories we've told ourselves. Now, I was very fortunate in that I had a very good role model in my mother. She was a French farm girl, and if things should have gone a certain way, would have gone a certain way, she would have stayed in France and experienced the Second World War and so forth, but that was not the case. All the education she had was the 6th grade. That was all they could offer in this little town in France that she was born in. She didn't know English, but she found a way to come to the United States, and she created a good life for herself. It wasn't always an easy life. There were plenty of unpleasant times. But it was a good life nonetheless. And her story included a conviction, a motto, if you wish. And it was, if somebody else can do it, I can do it too. Wow. And it brought her an experience in life that was an excellent one. Her story helped her to overcome many challenges. And if one's story is positive in the way hers was to her, what an enormous boost that can be to your whole psyche, to the way you look at things. It can make you optimistic. It can make you expectant of good things to come. If our stories, if our beliefs about ourselves and our past experiences are negative, on the other hand, well, that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. That can have us expecting more and more negative things in the future. Now, the simple truth is that every one of us is limited in some way by something in our story. Something is holding us back. Something has defined us in a way that doesn't give us freedom in life. We have things where we tell ourselves, I can't do this. I can't do that. There are things that we criticize ourselves about. We fuss at ourselves about. We have to look very closely at what parts of our story about ourselves affect us negatively, causing us to say to ourselves, well, I'm afraid of that, or that really makes me uncomfortable, or I don't like, or I always make a mess of whatever. How does your story limit you? How does it cause you difficulty? How does it make it hard to make a decision about something that would help you? How does it make you certain that you can't change a negative pattern, an unhelpful, pattern in our lives, a habit, perhaps? What is it that you might be telling yourself that makes you uncomfortable around certain people? Does your story tell you, well, I'm a certain way and I can't change that and that's the way it is. That's just me. But saying that to yourself is in fact endorsing behavior that can cause you losses, that can cause you problems you don't want to have. These are all the possibilities. And we need to look at those possibilities, see them for what they are, because we can do something about them. Now, there's a blank half sheet of paper in your orders of service, and I suggest that you write at the top of the paper when you have a chance, my story, and you take it with you, and sometime during the day, you spend a few quiet moments of introspection and write down your story. Tell your story of yourself, especially noting those characteristics or feelings or aversions that have caused difficulties or estrangements or harmful behaviors to you. These are, as I said before, important to know about because usually they're invisible unless you start thinking about them. I found something inside myself just a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, listen to that. I was surprised to hear it because it was so automatic. It was so, well, this is part of me. But no, it doesn't have to be part of me if it reaps difficulties for me. The blessed news is that we can do something about these things that somehow limit us, that don't permit the full expression of a good life, which is what God wants for us. Every time you walk into this room on Sunday morning, there is some portion of the sermon that invites you to rethink your story. to replace your story or certain elements of it from a tale of human blessings and challenges to something that is very, very much better. We begin to change our story about ourselves, and we find that as we do, we can release those inflated, perhaps inaccurate, perhaps painful memories that we've had that have been lurking in the back of our heads. In this room, you see and hear the spiritual truth of yourself. And it's not just true because I say it or Velma or another of our speakers says it. It's not true because of that. It is true when you begin making decisions and actions on these truths. And you see positive changes begin to unfold in your life, in your body, in your work, in your relationships, that prove to you, yeah, that is the truth. That works. What's the truth I'm talking about? It's the truth that your story is a very, very limited picture of yourself, because you are a spiritual being, first and foremost, having a human experience. And when you begin to incorporate the spiritual truth of yourself into your story, then everything changes for the better. You must never allow yourself to be limited and defined by some memory of things that you have thought or learned or done or heard or experienced. The good news is that your humanity is the very least part of you. Those experiences are learning experiences. Your divine identity is all important, and it is the eternal truth of you, not the 70, 80, 90, 100 years that you walk around on this planet. That is the eternal truth of you. That is your central story. And the omnipresent God is within you and all around you. Your divine identity is God's image. The spiritual truth of you is never-ending oneness with a force that is universal and all good, all love, all present, all helpful. We are drops, all of us, in a divine ocean that is knowledge, joy, beauty, opportunity, creativity, blessing, untold, love, unending. That is what we are a part of. That is our central story. The more we chat with God inside our own heads, the more we ask ourselves, well, how am I going to handle this? What would God want me to do about this? The better life becomes, the more harmonious it is. Living the spiritual life is simple, but it's not always easy. You need to spend time every day in some kind of spiritual practice, discipline. Maybe it's prayer or meditation. Maybe it's spiritual reading, the Bible, or some other uplifting spiritual book. Some say Qigong and yoga are spiritual practices, and if that's what you bring to it, that's what you get out of it. But some kind of spiritual practice that makes you feel closer to God, that needs to be part of every day, because it changes everything from the inside out. Living spiritually is following the golden rule. Oh, everybody knows that. Living the truth is obeying Jesus' commandment that you love God with your whole being, that you love your neighbor, and that you love yourself. You know your eternal story, and it is part of your story. It is a major part of your story. Living spiritually, living in the most powerful way you can is practicing compassion. Compassion for your fellow human beings. And you cannot open a magazine or listen to the news without finding that there is reason for you to feel compassion for the people whose lives are displayed right there. It's remembering the blessed truth that there is hidden good, like I was speaking about in the beginning. There is hidden good in every painful experience. It's realizing that every frustration, every setback is temporary. It isn't eternal. It might feel like it's eternal, but it is not eternal. No, it's temporary. And we can learn something from it. It's remembering that every joy has love and gratitude at its base. Now, what is your story? It's good to take a close look at it. It's good to incorporate the truth of yourself within it, the eternal truth of yourself. Such and such was a learning experience. So and so might have said or done, but that's okay. That's their learning experience. And I can profit from it. It's a wonderful idea to get a close look at anything that might limit you, that might make you fearful, intimidated, unable to cope successfully with your life. Because why? Again, in the light of spirit, you are invincible. Nothing can put you down. Nothing can stop you when God is with you. And what you are seeking to do is good and right. In whatever experience, right there, remind yourself, I am God individualized. I am God's opportunity. Day by day, I seek to bring forth my best self, what God put within me to be expressed. I seek to bring love into every interaction. Simple, isn't it? But not easy. Not easy to remember. But it can become an integral part of your story. An integral part. And fill you with the love and the power, the satisfaction and the blessings, large and small, that God has always planned for you.